Okay, so let's look at rotating. Like, let's say you have an ellipse in Desmos and you want to rotate it for your picture. Okay, you can see that I can rotate it around the center with this slider. Now, the first thing is you don't have to use the slider. Um, I was just showing you how I can easily rotate it by changing this number. The number you're going to change is this A value, this angle in here with cosine and sine that's everywhere in here that we see. Um, and so what you want to notice is that this looks like our general equation, our graphing equation, I should say, for an ellipse, where typically we have, like, say, the x minus whatever the center is in here, like x minus 3. Notice in this case, though, that we have the x and the y in here, both the x and the y. And then I take my center, like if I wanted this centered at, this one was at -3, -2. With my x, I put +3, that'll shift it left 3, and then y +2, that'll shift it down 2. So notice there's not just x or just y in here, it's actually got both. And you pair the x with the cosine, you multiply the x, the center part of the x with cosine, and the y part of the x with the sine. And you notice that that the sine of that angle A is the same. You could just put in a number and it'll stay fixed instead of A. But I like this slider thing so I can kind of pull it around and watch it move. Now notice in the second part of the ellipse, you have a very similar looking function here. But notice that they've been reversed, that the x is still the same. It's x plus 3, so your center is still the same. But now we have the sine value of A, and over here we have the cosine value with the y. So you have to rotate those two things. And that allows you to then rotate this conic however you want. So if you wanted to have an ellipse, but it needs to be rotated a little bit, that's how you can do it. And you can mess around with the 25, right? That would just make this a little bit less oblong or whatever. So we know that messing with the numbers in the denominator will change those major and minor radii. Oh, you should notice that there's a subtraction up here between the two terms and addition on this one between the two terms. So that's how you can rotate an ellipse. That's something you might want to do there. And of course, you can move the center around by just changing these values, right? If I wanted to say shift it left 5 instead of 3, I would put x plus 5, and I got to do it in both spots. X plus 5, and that shifts it right 5. So you can see that my center is now 5. I'm just showing you the center there so you can see it. Okay? Notice that if I change it to subtraction, that's going to make the hyperbola. So all the same things hold. You can play with the numbers in the same way, but now you can rotate this hyperbole. Here, I'll show you the rest of what I have. I didn't want you to see the equations yet, but we kind of have to. If I zoom out. This will get you a hyperbola rotated. All right? Now here's what I like. I'm going to put this back to an ellipse. Here's why I like the slider as well. And I'll make this 25. Let's say you had, you're making a picture like these are eyes or something, right? And actually you'd want eyes to slant opposite of each other. So let's just say it's something that you want to slant them exactly the same. I can have two of them, and with the slider, if I just put an A, they'll be exactly on the same rotation easily. I know you can just go in here and type in whatever number you want to rotate it, but this slider is nice to get it just right how you want it. And then you can always adjust the number from there. Like, let's say 0.8 wasn't great, but I need to do like 0.875. It'll adjust it even a little more. Or maybe it had to be 8.1. It's a little more of a fine adjustment if you need it. Okay? So that's how you rotate ellipses and hyperbolas. Let's look at what I have down here. I'm going to turn these off for a second. What I have down here is the form for a parabola with a vertex at an x value of 2 and a y value of 3. So, and I used A again, so if I pull A around, you can see that, right, if I turn on the 0.23, that's its vertex. Sorry. I can rotate the parabola however I like. And again, you can just look at the form here. This is sort of like, you know how usually it's like y squared equals 18x? Well, it's the same thing, right? This is usually where I'd have like the y minus the 3 or something, but now it's not just x and y. I got to mix up the x's and the y's, and the same thing over here. Um, so it's not just 18 like y plus 3 or something, or y minus 3. I've got the x's and y's mixed up. Notice the cosine goes with the x here, but the sine goes with the y there. So you can play this back and check it out, you know, however many times you want, and kind of really pause it and look in here at these equations. But that's how you can rotate.